The less you say about this one, the better. Classic VP curse, but also Vitality just completely collapsed, which undermined my entire draft. I was kind of playing for Vitality to win the whole thing, the anti-Na'Vi, but I think I also put too much emphasis on the matchups along the way, and I think I didn't anticipate how much I would lose when my teams lost that game eventually. So like Rops was sitting on 30 points, Zontix was on 30 points. I had these players with lots of points. They lose one game, it's over. So I needed Na'Vi, didn't have them. GG, go next. For the Blast Prem Full final, you got to keep in mind for fantasy that the playoff is included in this with the group stage. So you need to be drafting all the way to the grand final with the intention of getting there, which means 2-2-1 is going to be the way to draft. But keep in mind where teams land depending on their group stage result. Top of the group, straight to semis. Second, you're in quarters on the opposite side. And then third, you're in the same side, right? So that means there is some viability to going double up on one group, because if you get first and second, you'll end up in opposite sides. And then if you go like kind of 2-2 from different groups, you run the risk of going first and second. And then the best case result is hitting the semis and having your teams eliminate each other. So keep that in mind when drafting. Looking at Group A, it has Na'Vi written all over it, even with kind of the only one day off between EPL and this event. They're just better than every team here. G2 is the team I expect them to face in the upper final because FaZe have not looked good and G2 have had their number in all their recent outings. So it should be Na'Vi G2, and Na'Vi should be winning that just purely on where they're at the moment. And I think just the calling is on a whole different level to what G2, who just rely on the individuals, but the individuals from Na'Vi look sharp, so it should be Na'Vi. Group B, this should be Vitality. I know that Vitality betrayed us in EPL, but Eternal Fire went on to get into that grand final and almost beat Na'Vi in that best of 5. So honestly, I'm not too much reading into that result, and I think the Vitality should be coming first here. And again, we're expecting Vitality Na'Vi grand final, aren't we? Astralis, you should definitely be avoiding like the plague. CADIAN's only just joined this team, and given the circumstances of how he's playing here instead of Bro and the community response to that and the fact that it's in Copenhagen, there's just so much pressure on this team. I just don't see the individuals performing here. Whether it's Spirit or Liquid, that's your call. It should be Spirit, but Spirit have not looked good. I was not impressed by Spirit at EPL, so this very well could be Liquid. So yeah, I think Vitality and Na'Vi, just like EPL, feel like the safe teams that you have to go. So I think what's interesting about this event is just how cheap every player is. Like if you look at just Vitality and Na'Vi, there's only 2 gold players, and players like JL, Spinks, Flames, Emma, they're all sub 210, basically, which is crazy cheap for these players and how they've been performing. And it's no surprise to see like 90% of drafts being JL, Emma, JL Lexi, Emma Alexi. Like it's going to be a combination of those 3 in some form. So I actually kind of suggest having a think about whether you want to go Bit, whether you want to go Wonderful, whether you want to try and find some variation, because everyone is going to have such a similar Na'Vi setup that you might want to look at what you can do that's a little bit different. For Vitality, I would not be going Apex after how he performed in the playoffs, despite his group stage performance at EPL. He betrayed me as soon as I picked him, naturally. Mezzy, I think, is much better for that price. And I think, yeah, Spinks and Flames at those 2 prices, Spinks obviously jumps out the most, but a lot of people will be overlooking Flamesy because of Spinks' price. I think Zymo's may be a little too expensive, but if you think Vitality can win the whole thing, he's going to be the MVP probably. Spirit has still got this very cheap price on Chopper, which feels quite good. If you want to go on Spirit, I think you're getting Chopper and then you're grabbing Shiro probably. Donk is risky as hell, but it is Donk. But, you know, he didn't play great at EPL playoffs. Is he worth 235? I don't know. I'd probably go Shiro just for safety and roll points. And normally I'd recommend Zontix, guys, but I think my friendship with Zontix is over. I think after EPL, we're through Zontix. It's done. G2. Hunter played really well during EPL playoffs. I think him and Malbs are the 2 obvious players, which has kind of been the story for this team for a little. I think Monacy, you know, if you do think that this team is going to win the whole thing, you go Hunter Monacy. I cannot recommend Snacks. It's just too... I think you get your budget pick elsewhere and you go a bit heavier on this team if you think they're going to go through. can I recommend FaZe? I can recommend Rops. 203 for Rops is ridiculously cheap, and he performed really well in playoffs as well. As I said, in that game that they lost, he still got me like a heap of points. He was playing lights out. So I think Rops is still really viable, but I wouldn't go double up on FaZe. But I do think Rops as a solo pick is really cool. Liquid, they're pretty cheap. I think Ultimate for 208 is now in a price range that I'd recommend him. Like he was 215 in the playoffs for EPL, which is a bit too much. I think he was something like that. 208 is definitely more viable. JKS and Ukinda are going to jump out to a lot of people. I think JKS is the safer pick. So yeah, I'd be looking at him. Not Naf. Yeah, one of those two. Like I said, I don't think Astralis is worth picking, but CADIAN 183, I mean, that's a really cheap budget pick. Is that going to be better than picking Chopper? Probably not, because Astralis is going to come fourth in their group. If it was a different event and there was more opportunities and we'd actually seen them play, I'd be like, yeah, CADIAN 183 bargain, but given this team is probably going to flop out, I can't recommend him. And I struggle to recommend Falcons. This team is a dead team walking. Wouldn't pick him. So after how rough my result at EPL playoffs was, and now that I'm like 10th on the leaderboard instead of 2nd, I need to play a bit safer and I need to go Na'Vi. The question is, who do I build opposite Na'Vi? How do I play this? It makes sense to go Vitality, and so I'm going to go back in on them. It's the approach that I'm going that I think is going to set me apart. So I'm going to be doubling up with Flames and Spinks. I think that this is a combo that no one else will be running. I think it's going to be very unlikely to see this very often. And if Vitality win the whole thing, this is brilliant. With these prices, I can't pass up on this double up. It does mean I have to go lighter on Na'Vi, and I'm going to be doing something, I'm doing what I always do, all right? I'm looking at the team that everyone's picking, and I'm trying to pick players that not everyone is picking, which means I'm not getting Emma, I'm not getting JL, I'm getting Wonderful, and I'm getting Alexi. I think people are not going to be picking Wonderful because he's basically the same price as JL, who is performing a lot better, and Emma is cheaper than him and who is also performing better. So my hope here is that Wonderful steps up and delivers. He's got good role activation, so I think overall I'm pretty comfortable with what I've got here. With 186 left, the obvious choice is to grab JKS. He is a popular pick, but it makes sense for his price, for how he's been performing. His roles are good, and he's an Aussie, so I finally get to pick him. I've been wanting to pick JKS for ages. I've just not believed in him in my draft at this point, but for 186, can't pass up on it. So that's going to be it. I'm not skipping Na'Vi this time, but I'm still prioritizing Vitality. I'm going a little bit different. I've tried to make a Na'Vi Vitality draft that isn't like everyone else's. So let's see how it goes. As always, guys, let me know what you're drafting. Let me know your thoughts, and good luck.